you need to pack up and take home with you. A man of God helps you depend on God, not on him. A man of greed wants you to depend on him so that he can get money from you. A lot of so-called prophets today charge you money. The more you pay, the more they pray. This is wrong. Anybody who charges you for prayer or ministry is in error. Mark my words, a day of judgment is coming on the false prophets and the fake pastors in this land. Buy this anointing oil. Buy this holy water. Buy this prayer cloth. Nonsense. Do not be deceived. Jesus never sold any miracle, and neither did the apostles. We have to depend on Jesus and Jesus only. The cult of celebrity pastors must end.
Hello everyone. Are you surprised by this video start? It is simply because we have decided from time to time to confront you with the realities of this world, so that very often you will be honest with yourself about whether or not you are already in the kingdom or not, or fine if you're ready to get into it. It's me one more time for my Thursday video. I am very happy to be your host for the day. I am Ambassador Gabrielle Mbala, and with Ambassador John and Ambassador Lou doing the voiceover for this teaching, we will continue to tell you more about the book of Job. We have decided to show you what is hidden in this magnificent book, which is in the constitution of the kingdom of heaven. Maybe you refused to read it because it was very complex? It's time to find out. You can go to the thread of our videos to understand this simply masterful book from the first chapter. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and on all our platforms. I ask you to take a good hot coffee, your tea, and settle down. We talk about the book of Job, and it's intense every time. I don't want you to miss this, and neither do you. Let's go. Come on, my Ambassador John, I'll give you the floor to read some verses in this teaching.
Hello, I am Ambassador John. I will read you the last interventions of Bildad and Job. Here is what is written in chapters 25 to 28. Bildad intervention, the universal power of God. Bildad the Shuha then spoke and said to Job, God holds a sovereign, frightening power. It imposes peace up to the highest of the sky. Who could count the troops at his disposal? And on whom does his sun not rise? How can a man be right against God? And how will a human claim to be pure? If before God even the moon is dull, and if the stars seem dim to him, what will become of these poor humans? As insignificant as a simple worm?
Power is defined as the state of a person, of a group, that has a great action. It is also defined as the domination that results from this action. Power is also characterized by what can do a lot, by what is capable of producing a lot of effect. Often humans equate power with efficiency, and in mathematics, power even has a measure, especially in physics. When we talk about the power of electricity, we use volts, we use amperes, and we can characterize the power in watts. The power and reflection of energy is the reflection of the capacity for effectiveness, and Bildad the Shuha gives us very important information about God when he says that God has all the power. We, as human beings, usually have the ability to achieve things. It is this ability to achieve certain things that allows us to produce results. And the results that we produce are at the discretion of other living beings. The heavens, the earth, all the beings that are under the heavens, can measure the quality, the scope of our results at the end of our actions. If they were to say that the result we achieved on a scale of 1 to 10 was worth 1, was worth 5, or was worth 10, then they would say so. But the words used to qualify the scope and effectiveness of the results we have at the end of our actions are regularly the following: prodigious, fantastic, incredible, clever, ingenious. As human beings we are a result, the trees are results, the animals are results, the earth is the result of a much bigger action that took a lot more volts and peace and gave access at a lot of watts, usable over generations, for centuries, and for spouses of entire millennia. And the adjectives that are generally used to qualify its results are immeasurable, glorious, incredible, unthinkable, impenetrable, so much so that one cannot densify this capacity. We can only scientifically densify the need for such a result over millions of years, or even billions of years. According to science, the Earth had to warm up and then cool down. The atoms had to meet, jostle each other. The heavier particles go down and the lighter particles go up. It took particles like gold to get buried underground and particles like oxygen to get pulled in by gravity. A nucleus had to form to create a gravitational effect. An atmosphere had to be born to be able to allow the process of creation to be confirmed, materialized, and manifested. Also, let me tell you something very important. The strength that God puts into creating something has no equal. Man will never be able to match this type of force, because God had to be located in eternity exactly to be able to create what He created. This is why you are going to realize that whatever the envy of the transhumanists or of all these people of the New World Order, they will never be able to live long enough to achieve in their lifetime an appreciable result for the others, by the others, and glorified by the universe. We're done with power. Now let's take the terror. Terror is defined as being an extreme fear that upsets and paralyzes. It is also a collective fear that we manage to make reign in a population and a group to break its resistance, and sometimes when it comes to terrestrial governance, terror results in a regime based on the use of imposed arbitrary decisions and violence. Terror goes so far in its extremes among human beings that it even manages to become terrorism. Terror therefore refers, in our view, to a science organized by human beings to terrorize their fellow human beings and impose themselves on them by force. Bildad de Shuha says that, to God all terror you know. The human being is convinced that he can dominate the earth by war and by force. Human beings think they don't need to believe in God to rule the world. But the part that always amuses me the most is when on a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Sunday, while people are going about their usual business, suddenly the earth opens up under your feet without holding account of your skin color, your background, your social class, your religion, your physical condition, your beliefs, your vision, your dreams, and your projects. This is when the human being begins to submit to the power of God that we were talking about. Because nature is now rebellious towards us and God gave it from the beginning self-destruction mechanisms so that it self-regulates from season to season. Nature rose up against man to tell him that if you disobeyed the Creator, we did not disobey the Creator, so you will not be able to live without submitting to the Creator. And there, suddenly the ground says to itself one morning, I am going to prove it to you. Just by the way, scientists did not invent self-destruction on their own in the case of their machines. God placed in every mechanism He created the ability to self-destruct as an absolute blueprint in the face of massive malfunction. He is super far-sighted, and we are in His image and likeness. After having submitted to the power of God without wanting to recognize it, survivors of disasters or those who helplessly witness the catastrophe in progress suddenly want to submit to God. They first submit to the creation of God, which is the expression of His incommensurability. You know, the human being is very contemptuous, very proud. Bildad may be thinking that Job is trying to despise God, that he is trying to make him arrogant, to show him his pride. At this point in reading the book of Job, I don't blame Bildad anymore. I don't blame him anymore simply because it's getting blurry for him and others to stay with someone who is hurting. He did not realize until he came to see him that he was under the influence of something that surpasses all intelligence. Bildad and his friends fail to see that what is happening is a deal between God and the devil. And since they haven't noticed it from the start, it becomes difficult as the words line up to realize that this discussion is pointless and that they are making a mistake. They can't even notice it anymore. They have already gone too far into stupidity and madness. It is therefore no longer the time for us to judge them. It is no longer the moment at all, it is past. It's not important anymore, because soon all this will stop. It is also a way for me to say to you, that all the people who give you advice for a long time in your times of distress, and who try to make you look guilty when you know you are innocent, who try to subjugate you in their judgment, to make you understand that they are right and that they are showing much more wisdom than you, no matter how many days they will take to give you advice, as long as it is God the origin of your distress. The day of shame for these people will be very near. Bildad gave us very important information about terror. I want to come back to it. When the earth opens under your feet, after you often realize that all the people who did not want to believe in God begin to say as soon as they are in this situation, if there is a God who exists, may He save me. Meanwhile, nature has its whims. Suddenly everyone remembers to implore God, gays, lesbians, trans people, murderers, corrupt people, traffickers, religious people, atheists, idolaters, rich people, poor people, prostitutes, sex abusers. He children, the innocent, they implore Elohim with force. And all this for what? Because God had to dare to do an act of terrorism to make it understood that if you don't want to fear Him by your will, you will discover Him by force. A lot of people say, yes, really, I can't believe in that kind of God, because He's a horrible person. He is not well, and all the crap, but I still say that He is in His plan. The plans of an eternal person and the plans of mortal people are of two diametrically opposed natures. He lives in eternity, and the concept of existence in his mind is not the same as the concept of existence in the mind of man. The existence of man is based on the beginning, that is to say the birth, and the end, that is to say the death. The concept of your existence in the head of God begins with the moment He founded your soul. Then this soul comes to inhabit the body, this body which sees the telephone, which turned on the computer to hear this teaching. What I'm teaching right now is not mystical. The cultists just take that kind of detail to make you dastardly people who know more mysterious things than others. If you consider it well, you will realize that it is from the idea of your soul in His head that God knows you, and this moment when He founded your soul is in eternity. This is why your soul is eternal. Repeat what I say, my soul is eternal, the death of the body is not the end. When Bildad says that God makes peace reign in the regions, in His high regions, it is true. Why does he say these regions are high? Quite simply because they are at the top. For you to understand what I am saying, know that you will never again hear the sky lose its tranquility. Indeed, the angels will never again fall from heaven in disobedience, because they too have seen what happened to their brother Satan. The Spirit of God testifies to my spirit at this time that they spoke to him, that they said to him, Brother, what are you doing? You are disobeying to the Most High. Because of your jealousy towards man, his image, his likeness, you will never see the uproar again, because God controls his troops. He is a God of implacable justice. This is why in its high regions which are in the heavens, whether it is the first, the second, the third or the seventh heaven, peace reigns. What impresses me, you know, is that the Jews, I mean the real Jews, are aware of the existence of heaven, and it is with all this knowledge that the false Jews want to overthrow the world and subjugate the world to their own domination. I'll tell you one thing, I'll still give them time. Peace will also reign on earth. Peace will come down because it is God's will, and Jesus Christ said we must pray that His will be done on earth as it is done in heaven, as it is done in the high regions of God. Ah, my brothers, I am embraced with joy within me. Bildad says that the armies of God are innumerable and the light of God is rising everywhere. Many people, in many cultures and religions, say that God is the sun, because they say to themselves, ah, the sun shines, it is a God, and it is the sun that dominates the world, that is in the heliocentric perception of life, according to which the earth is the center of the whole universe. And it is also a phenomenon of ignorance on the part of the nations, because this thought does not help to understand the power of God. But I will tell you one thing, whether the human being likes it or not, he forces with all his heart, he fights with all his might not to accept it. One thing is certain, human beings will recognize the existence of God. I say that even by force, the human being will recognize the existence of God, and the human being, the man born of a woman, will not appear before God, if it is not by His will. And you will ask me, what is the will of God? It is that by the recognition of the sending of his only Son, the King Jesus Christ, to give us the kingdom, we too become pure like Jesus Christ. And that we are able to stand before his will, and that he appreciates us. But since we can't, it crosses the visor of Jesus Christ. So he can look at us and see if we belong to the kingdom of heaven. There is no sparkle that stands before God, because he is the ultimate energy. He is the most universal energy, and his potency, his power are universal. We are not even grains of sand before his eyes, because even the grain of sand still submits before the will of God, period. So let's open our eyes and be wise.
Will you call me?
Sorry?
Will you call me?
You mean telephone you?
Yes.
When?
Now.
But you're sitting right here.
This is why I wanted to have lunch. You just phone me. Now. Hello, Bethany speaking.
Hello?
You phoning for Bethany?
Yes. What are you doing?
This is Bethany. Can you hear me?
Well, you're right in front of me.
But can you hear me down the phone?
Oh my gosh.
This is me. On the phone, I had it implanted. My hand is the phone. I can walk and talk because I'm on the phone inside my hand. I am the phone. This is what phones are going to be from now on. I have integrated. Thank you for your call. Subdermal implants. They charge themselves with motion like a self-winding watch. And it's on the 22 network. I get signal across 95% of UK mainland, 98 by next year.
When I phoned you, it was ringing. You were ringing.
That's the speaker. So small.
Okay, but when did you get this done?
That course in Winchester, I had one finger done every night. I still need to use a handset to phone out. Look.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay, but look, I can't believe you had surgery without telling me.
Skin plants. Not surgery, and I knew you'd be cross. But I'm 18, and you had that tattoo when you were 18, and it's the same sort of thing. And I wanted to ask you, will you do me a favour?
What?
Will you tell Dad?
Oh, sweetheart.
Please, will you tell Dad for me?
Job then answered, "Ah, how well you know how to help the weak. Help him whose arm is weak. Ah, how well you know how to advise the incapable and, on all subjects, show your competence. But for whom these speeches? Who are you inspired by to speak like this? Lower than the ocean and those who populate it, in the land of shadows, one begins to tremble, for the world of the dead is naked before God. No veil hides the abyss from his eyes. It is God who extends the north of the sky over the void and who suspends the earth above nothingness. It locks the rain inside the clouds and prevents them from bursting under the weight. It veils the face of the full moon by drawing a curtain of clouds before it. He drew a circle around the ocean, where the light ends the night. At the threats of God, the sky, on its pillars, is seized with tremors and remains stupefied. God's power overcame the ocean and his intelligence overcame the monster Rob. Like a wind, his breath swept the sky, his hand pierced the tortuous serpent. If this is only a small part of his actions, and we only hear a very faint echo, who will understand the thunder of his deeds? Job resumed his plea saying, "This is what I swear by the living God, who refuses me justice, by the most great God who fills me with bitterness, as long as I have in me a little bit of life, that the breath of God will be in my nostrils, for never will my lips speak falsehood, nor my tongue betray the truth. Far be it from me to agree with you. Never, until my death, will I give up calling myself innocent. I firmly maintain that my conduct is right. I will not back down. In conscience, I am not ashamed of my life. It is for my enemy that the fate of the wicked must be reserved. To those who attack me, the fate of criminals. What remains for a man of bad faith when God cuts or tears the thread of his life? When the time of trouble comes for him, are his cries for help received by God? Would he find his pleasure with the most great God? Would he pray to God at all times? I say aloud what the great God thinks. I do not hide his ulterior motives from you. You have seen, all of you, what it is. So why is your speech so hollow? Here is the fate that God reserves for criminals, the part that the most great God assigns to tyrants. If their sons grow up, war will kill them. Their children will not have enough bread to live on. Finally, the plague will carry off the survivors. Their widows will not even be able to mourn them. If they pile up the money like dust and heaps of clothes like mud, it is a devotee who will put on the clothes. It is an honest man who will receive the money. The house these people have built is fragile, a rickety vine-keeper's hut. They go to bed rich. They are not going to die. When they open their eyes, there is nothing left. Terror surprises them like overflowing water. A whirlwind carries them away during the night. The east wind picks them up and it goes further, violently tearing them from their home. Without having pity on them, God takes them as targets, so that they must flee to avoid the blows. We applaud seeing them in this state. From where they were, we whistle with pleasure.
The deceased trembled beneath the water, and the creatures that inhabit it. What Job reveals is a resounding statement. This is a very important moment for me to talk again about the destination of the dead. So where do we go after we die? This is one of the 4 great questions in the life of any man. Because the human being wonders about 3 big questions, see 4, which are: where do we come from? Where do we go after our death? What is our use or our mission during our life on earth? Who are we? There's plenty more to discover in the MBNK News TV Ambassador program. Just by the way, I want to let it be known that if you want to know the answer to all these questions, join us on our website and know the truth of the kingdom by consulting our library. Back to our subject. When Job tells Bildad that the dead trembled beneath water and the creatures that dwell therein, but what is he referring to? We are going to question the constitution of the kingdom and enter into the revelations of this time. First question: why do the deceased tremble when they are already dead? Second question: Why does he say that they tremble beneath the seas, and the creatures that dwell therein? We will answer these two questions with a single global answer. In some translations it says this: lower than the ocean and those who dwell it, in the land of shadows, one begins to tremble, New Covenant Version. In another version, elsewhere it says the spirits of the dead stir beneath the ocean and its inhabitants. Version Lewis II, 1910. In this translation, the expression Hades corresponds to the Hebrew Sheol and the Greek Hades, or Hades. In other French versions, these words have also been rendered by the plural the hells, which does not designate a place of suffering, like the singular hell, but the whole subterranean domain of the dead. The Latin infernus means below, as depicted in the mythologies of antiquity. It is undoubtedly to Mesopotamian representations that the Hebrew conception of Sheol is most easily compared. The etymology of the word is uncertain, but in Hebrew it is naturally related to the root shl, which means to ask, to claim, which fits well with the personification of Hades as a large, insatiable monster, which engulfs the living without rest as described by Esdras and Solomon. However, it is usually imagined as a subterranean and dark place, because Job talks about it a lot as it is since we began this study. David also spoke of it in Psalm as a dusty place. In Genesis, Moses also noted that it is a potentially silent place. I won't send you in every verse, because it's a big study, but read your Bibles. It's in this constitution that you find the answer to life and death and to every description. We trembled there then, because this place is a country for shadows, people without bodies. Hebrew uses several synonyms such as Sheol, like Abaddon, the world of the disappeared, which means to disappear, to perish, Shahat, the pit. As if Job wanted to talk about this pit serving as a trap, a form of bottomless pit. I always say it to you, and you will see it in the continuation of this teaching. God does not make respect of person in his principles except for those like Enoch, Elijah, and Jesus. The place where all the dead tremble is without ethnic, national, religious, or moral discrimination. It is in principle a place from which one does not return, as illustrated by the representation of its doors and its locks comparable to those of a city. But with the appearance of the doctrine of the resurrection, Sheol becomes a temporary stay. This is how they were created, until the day when they are judged, until the time of the final day, that of the great judgment which will be exercised on them. At the same time, Sheol is diversifying, but in Sheol, there is Abraham's bosom, where the sons of the kingdom do not tremble when God takes a look there from time to time. There they are separated from the wicked. Jesus spoke to us from Abraham's bosom to let us know that we should hope to go and rest quietly, and without anxiety awaiting our judgment. The trembling is therefore reserved for the infidels, for in the land of the dead the evil spirits mockingly tell them that they are promised Gehenna, which is intended as a place of destruction or torment by fire. The second death, and it is hierarchically superior to Hades, since it will eventually swallow up death and Hades. That Catholics stop lying to you. We will not pray for you after your death until God decides to switch you into the bosom of Abraham. Those in it will rise up to rule the earth with Jesus Christ in the kingdom they have been trying to give to the wicked all their lives. And the wicked will be forever in the lake of fire. So Job is referring to the fact that when people die, their souls don't go to live in water as many animist people would believe for people who drown. They go to a place that is well below water, and the dead go to a place called Hades. After Job says that before God, Hades finds itself naked, the abyss of perdition is unprotected. There are people who say to themselves that they can invoke the dead, the spirits, by hiding from God, or that when they do, God does not see. But what I want to tell you is that God sees everything in hell. He sees the attempts of the living to permanently rally the dead. Are the dead always bothered and disturbed by the living who seek protection, solution, answer, and strength all at the same time? Yes. After Job says, "It is he who unfolds the name on the void, which suspends the earth on the void." I am surprised by this Job. He lived in the country of Hus, which is located in Asia Minor. So he would have traveled to the level of Antarctica? Some versions say that the North Job is talking about is Antarctica. Job does not live at the level of Antarctica, but nevertheless he speaks of Antarctica. He speaks of the north of the terrestrial globe. And it's as if he knows that the top of the world seen from space is Antarctica. You can realize that the Earth globe presents the frozen part of the Earth at the top. I am extremely surprised. My question is, how did Job also know that this north and this planet are placed in a vacuum? That if in their time they were louts according to scientists? So Job also had the science of astronomy. And I'll tell you how it's possible. In fact, the Jews relate that Job is the husband of Dinah, daughter of Jacob. Hence one its presence in the Bible, two, its great knowledge of God. How to explain this to you? Adam taught all of his sons the story of his creation, and then they faithfully passed it down orally from generation to generation so that people would remember and seek God. Job not being of a tribe outside that of Israel, he also heard this oral history and studied it like the majority of the male inhabitants of Israel. Since Job even explains by observation that the limit between the earth and time on earth is circular when he speaks of the horizon. He says, "He drew a circle on the surface of the water, on the border between light and darkness." And it is through the knowledge of this ancestral and oral history that Job recognizes that the danger is akin to the serpent and that he is fleeing and overcome by God when he says this, "His breath gives serenity to heaven, his hand pierced the fleeing serpent." I like this last sentence that I ask you to consider yourself through the Holy Spirit. If all this represents only a glimpse of his way of doing things, the faint echo that reaches us, who will be able to understand the thunder of his power? Well, I'm going to tell you now quickly about what life is for God. It is a thread, which has a certain length. We must live to savor every strand of it and reach its natural length. For in the grave we can no longer beg God to help us, nor to save us, and even if we do, he will only respond after the process he has already planned from the beginning in the event of a fall. Let's reread this part. Here is the fate that God reserves for criminals, the part that the greatest God assigns to tyrants. If their sons grow up, the war will kill them, their children will not have enough bread to live. Finally, the plague will carry off the survivors, their widows will not even be able to mourn them. If they accumulate the money like dust and heaps of clothes like mud, it is a devotee who will put on the clothes, it is an honest man who will receive the money. The house these people have built is fragile, a rickety winemaker's hut. They go to bed rich, they are not going to die. When they open their eyes, there is nothing left. Terror surprises them like overflowing water, a whirlwind carries them away during the night. The east wind picks them up and it goes further, violently snatching them from their home. Without pity on them, God targets them, so they must flee to avoid the blows. We applaud to see them in this state. From where they were, we whistle with pleasure. Do you understand what is happening? Wealth does not buy place in God's plan. As soon as your eyes are closed, wealth stays with the living. So let us develop royal prosperity and wealth, which is that of giving the land the kingdom. Yes, God has planned wonderful things for us in our lifetime, and when we access them, it is mental paradise. But above all, let us never forget that we need to be permanently connected with our government and carry out our government's orders every day. This is our priority.